Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very interesting session this evening. The prolonged restrictions on public activities have crippled the conventional entertainment industry. Cinemas have suffered the most. There's been a big shift to online entertainment and everyone has to adapt. In this session, we will discuss how innovative use of digital technologies and new business models will transform the internet entertainment industry or not. Let us hear more on delivering new blockbusters, entertaining the post-COVID consumer. A warm welcome to the virtual stage, Mr. Srinivas Dempo, Vice President AIMA and Chairman Dempo Group of Companies, Mr. Ajay Bijli, Chairman and Managing Director, PVR Limited, Mr. Uday Shankar, President FICCI and former President Asia Pacific Walt Disney Company, and former Chairman Star and Disney India, and Rajiv Makhni, Group Managing Editor, Technology, NDTV. With these words, may I now request Mr. Dempo to introduce the session.
Very good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Ajay Bijli, Mr. Uday Shankar, Mr. Rajiv Makhni, and ladies and gentlemen. I think we are meeting in the most extraordinary times. It may be any business. We have gone through many changes, many disruptions in our processes, systems, people. And I think entertainment industry is no different. But one thing is entertainment industry is part of every Indian's life, whether it is Bollywood or cricket. Everybody seems to be emotionally attached to both these industries. And this becomes a very important segment for the entertainment industry. We were just discussing informally before this session how important entertainment industry is, particularly in these stressful times. And I think it has gained even more importance. But COVID has been particularly hard on the conventional media and the entertainment industry. Particularly, the closure of public places for most of us has destroyed the box office revenues of both shows and sports. Further, the restriction on mobility and proximity have also constrained content creation. Cinemas, as you know, have taken a big hit, and even after much delayed reopening, only in a few cities, theaters can barely fill up 50% of their volumes. However, the pandemic has been a boom in other related industry, and that is the digital streaming platforms. And their subscriptions have surged as people have been confined at homes. Amazon Prime and names like Netflix have become household, even amongst people who had not known them earlier. Streaming actually was already catching on before COVID. The content studios and TV networks already were setting up their own distribution services. Now, particularly, the direct-to-home and direct-to-phone entertainment has become a new staple for consumers. Cinemas have started fading. I hope not for too long, because personally, the experience of going to a cinema hall with many of my friends can't be replicated when you sit and watch Netflix. However, many of them are even struggling to hold broadcasting rights of major sporting and entertainment events. Clearly, the business model has shifted. Clearly, there's a paradigm shift to direct-to-consumer and on-demand services as the new rules of the game. Who better to actually educate us, enlighten us, than such a distinguished panel of speakers? It's my privilege to introduce our two stalwarts of the industry, as well as Mr. Rajiv Makhni. I'm a big fan of your show, Mr. Makhni.
Thank you.
A gadget guru that I follow very regularly. Mr. Bijli, it is a pleasure to have you with us on the AIMA platform, and I'm grateful to you for doing this session.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
You have been a pioneer in the Indian cinema industry, starting with just 4 screens to I think more than 850 screens across the country. You have been an innovation and you have shown leadership in this business. We know that COVID has crippled the cinema industry, which is already in the throes of disruption, as I said earlier, because of the streaming entertainment. We would be particularly interested to hear from you on how you have coped up with the COVID crisis and what is the future of cinema. As I said, there's a lot of emotional bonding for physically going and watching a cinema. Will this change forever, or are you hopeful of people coming back to theaters? Uday, thank you for agreeing to doing this session. It's nice to connect with you after many years. We used to meet regularly during our ISL matches, and it's nice to see you. You are currently heading a very important position of the president of FICCI, which is into policy formulation and advising government on important business aspects. You are actually considered the father of the contemporary news and entertainment television in India. Under your leadership, Star became the dominant media company in the country, and you set new standards for content and presentation of news, sports, and entertainment on Indian television. You also pioneered streaming TV in India much before the COVID crisis, when we all saw Hotstar app on our mobile phones. After exiting Walt Disney and Star, you are now working on new innovations in content creation. We really look forward to knowing from you your prognosis for the media and entertainment industry in this session. Pleasure to have you with us. We are delighted that this session is going to be moderated by a celebrity tech journalist who all of you all know, Mr. Rajiv Makhni, to moderate this discussion. He's the Group Managing Director, Technology at NDTV, and a tech columnist with many of the leading newspapers and magazines. Mr. Makhni, it's my pleasure now to welcome you and request you to moderate and lead this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And, it's a complete pleasure. And even before I begin, with all the current situations and the conversation completely and absolutely only on one subject, this is my personal humble request to everybody that you've got. I know the cliche is be safe, be protective, but now take these words to be meaning way more than they ever have before. You have to protect yourself, you have to protect your family, you have to now protect your children, which were never part of the equation earlier. And especially now you have to protect your parents and your elders, and anything that you're doing right now that goes against any part of common sense is going to be something that really, really doesn't work. And I'm starting this session with a humble request to all of you: use common sense and be completely and absolutely paranoid. It doesn't matter if others make fun of you. It doesn't matter if others call you an extremist in terms of the way of protecting everybody. You've got to do it. So now I'll wear my moderator hat and get started. And wearing the moderator hat also means that two people that I know very well personally would usually call them Ajay and Uday. Now have to call them Mr. Bijli and Mr. Shankar. So welcome to the session, Mr. Bijli and Mr. Shankar. Great privilege, like we were discussing just before we were getting started. I'm going to be moderator less and audience more, because I am really, really very intrigued and curious to find out, because you both represent almost two polar opposites now. I think you were on the same platform at one time, but the pandemic, the lockdown has made you represent two polar opposites now as to how people are consuming content and entertainment. And the pandemic and the lockdown, and now the new pandemic literally, and the new level of lockdown that we are almost in some cities and may happen in all over the country, I think has really taught us how things that we took for granted are not for granted. A laptop or a computer, a smartphone, a tablet is worth its weight in gold. To keep sanity, to keep some level of family bonding, how entertainment is one of the most important things, and how we've missed out on things, as was spoken right in the beginning, that there is both a psychological as well as a true warmth and connection with going to a movie with family and friends, which is just not happening at all right now. So I'd love to know from both of you a little bit more about what you think on, like I said, the two polar opposites that you now almost represent. So I'll start with you, Mr. Bijli. And no warm-up, I'm just going to go straight into it. What are your worst fears for the cinema industry in the wake of this second wave, or some people even call it the third wave of COVID and lockdowns?
Rajiv, I don't know what the protocol is, but I really think call me Ajay. I feel much more comfortable. Whenever, and especially now with the second or third wave, as you mentioned, I just find myself very myopic if I only talk about the cinema exhibition industry. I think it's, and that's the reason why I reached out to Sunil and Harsh yesterday, that it's much bigger now. It's more about humanity and the human race, which needs to be protected with vaccination and the protocols that you mentioned, and how everybody has to be careful. And we need to revive, what normal world was, not the dystopian world that we're living in currently. So I'm just a very small subset of what normalcy is all about. I think, so my biggest driver of our business is really human beings, human nature. Aristotle said that, we are all social animals at the end of the day. We were not designed to be incarcerated at home. So whatever we are doing just now by being at home is not by choice, it's by default. That we have to be home, we have to protect ourselves, and we can't go out because the pandemic is such. But I think the future of the cinema really lies in, there's only one fight, which is COVID. There's nothing else. According to me, everything is really, a discussion which is very momentary because we are in a year which is an aberration year. Obviously, people will talk about kitchens and home deliveries when restaurants are shut and you can't step out. Similarly, people will talk about home entertainment when out of home entertainment is shut. So I think we are talking about a half-open world in which we're living a half a life. So I think I'm pretty clear and optimistic about the future of cinema. The moment things open up, we're able to control the pandemic by whichever means. Vaccination appears to be the number one panacea for this problem at the moment. I think people will come back. It is very difficult to incarcerate people at home. And that's one aspect of it. And I know I have to keep my answer short. And the other is really the economic rationale, Rajiv, which I've spoken about earlier as well, that still 60 to 70% of any content that gets created, the revenues of that content comes from theatrical. So theatrical becomes the benchmark for everything, for word of mouth, whether the movie is good or not, for the revenue potential, on the basis of which the other monetization avenues, which is OTT platforms, satellite, TV, all that, they decide how much to bid for the movie. So if theatrical itself becomes shut, it becomes very difficult for the other monetization journey to happen properly. So I think whatever is happening just now is happening because cinemas are shut, the platforms need content, the consumers need movies. So all these transactions have happened because cinemas are shut. The moment things come back to normal, for the reasons that I gave you earlier, I think it's too much in our fabric. It's too much part of our DNA to go out and consume movies. And this channel is not going to go away that easily.
All right. I'm glad we started with, somebody who's looking at it very positively and very optimistically. But there are many things I'm going to come back to you, Ajay, because, the psychological impact, the discovery impact of entertainment at home, the business impact of it, and how, studios are coming in and creating their own streaming platforms and how that impacts you because they will look after themselves more than a cinema hall chain or, things that are happening out there. So I'll come back to you for all of that. So Mr. Shankar, and I'll call you Mr. Shankar till you don't correct me and say I can call you Uday. So Mr. Shankar, from you actually I want to know, you moved on from TV broadcast, or as we called it, conventional TV broadcast, after giving it its current form. Did you see something? I mean, were you prescient? Did you see something dramatically different a few years back that you said that I need to move on, because you pretty much moved at the time streaming was taking over and conventional TV was dying out? Was that the reason?
Rajiv, first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and thanks to AIMA. And the second order of business, yes, please do call me Uday, I insist.
Okay.
And that said, with due respect, I don't think I moved over or anyone has moved over. When I was at Star did not move over from broadcasting to streaming. The parent company, Walt Disney Company, which is probably the most successful traditional media company globally to have transitioned into streaming, did not move over from traditional content and traditional hosting of content to streaming. But to answer your question, did I see anything? We saw the tea leaves. I'll share a story with you. Many years ago, I think this was 2012 or 2012, if I'm not wrong. I was coming back home from work one night pretty late, around 11 o'clock. And, you have these tragic scenes in Mumbai of people sleeping on the pavements. And I saw, it was very late at night under Kemp's Corner. Streaming did not even exist in India at that time. Internet capacity was not there. Smartphones were very limited. But there were these dongles which people would come and plug into their mobile devices and watch content. And I saw these preloaded dongles. People who were sleeping on pavement at midnight, huddled together and watching something. And I was, passing by in my car. And I realized that, that just set me thinking that While the growth of Indian television is one of the most spectacular television stories, where in just about 20, 25 years, from a non-existent television market, it's gone to 125, 150 million television homes. And one of the most vivacious creative ecosystem has been created around television. But in a country of 1.3 billion people, it is just so few TV sets. And that was the thing that we started thinking at Star at that time, that if this country was to really explode the universe of content consumers, television wasn't going to be the means of doing that. Television would be a very, very important component of it, and it would continue to grow because, again, India remains still one of the few countries which is adding new television sets at the rate of 7, 8, 9 million year on year. So it would continue to grow, but the mobile device was the one that was going to take over. So, there were those signals that were coming. The difference was that a company like Star and its parent company, which was 21st Century Fox then, was very prepared to take that challenge, wasn't concerned about protecting the old business model for fear of, losing value there. It was very confident of making a forceful leap into the future, and without worrying about, oh my God, what would happen to all that we have created so far? Because we were able to see at that time that the model would be, one of, so to speak, multiple rockets strapped strapped together so that multiple rockets can fire. And I think that's exactly the model that works even for, that's exactly the analogy that applies even to movies. The cinema halls are not going anywhere. In my experience, I think they're going to get only bigger and bigger. This is an aberration. People have not stopped going to theaters because they don't want to. They've been forced to not to go to. And they would go back to theaters with a vengeance. But, and that would make movies, the business of movies, much bigger. But now, from monetization being, earlier it was just, you could only make money by releasing a movie in the theaters. And if the movie, God forbid, didn't do so well in the theaters, the producers and people who had invested in the movie, they were all left, high and dry. And then came television rights, and people started making money by selling television rights for those movies after they came out of the theaters. And now there is streaming. So multiple streams of monetization are opening up, and that basically means that the economics of creativity is just getting better and better across the board, for drama, for sports, for movies. And that economics is only going to get stronger. I don't see, as long as people are willing, people are enjoying the experience of a big screen, and in case of theaters, an even bigger screen, and with everything, it's an event going to a theater. As long as those experiences keep getting richer and keep getting more enhanced, the economics is going to get only better, and hence you will see more creativity and you will see more output.
All right, great. So, fantastic. And like I said, multiple questions that I have, including the fact that we've seen a resurgence of traditional TV now, especially in the pandemic and lockdown time, where people have rediscovered what it is to have 24/7 news and all these things. So we talk about that. And I also want to talk to you about what happened with Hotstar and Disney and what Disney's done abroad and all of those things. So I'm going to come back to you with that. Now, you may have noticed, and this is to all the audience and everybody that has tuned in, that we do have two panelists that are both extremely positive and very, very optimistic about everything. So unfortunately, the moderator's role is going to change a little. I'll have to play the contrarian and the devil's advocate out here and maybe try and force out a little bit more from the two panelists. So Ajay, to you, again, we were talking about the fact that most of the times when we see most of the doom and gloom around cinema halls and cinema chains and multiplexes, it's predominantly news that is to do with what's happening abroad and, how they are completely and absolutely, they are completely captive to Hollywood movies predominantly, and there's no real world cinema out there, while India is a little different. So can you take us through how you believe we're very different and how we can bounce back quicker from where we are right now?
Yeah, Rajiv, the reason why I find India very different, and this is the only market we operate in, is because I think it's a volume-driven business. It's not a homogeneous market. It's very disparate. There are about 7 different languages Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, Punjabi, Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, all sorts of movies come. So, and also big budget movies, small budget movies, medium budget movies, all sorts of films come. So we, because there is so much volume going through it, that even if a movie doesn't do well, let's say a big, big movie doesn't do well, a sleeper hit would come along of a Rajkumar Rao or a Ayushmann Khurrana or a movie equivalent of a Razi that makes up for the dip in any blockbuster that doesn't do well. Similarly, people are going out in hordes. As I said, 1.45 billion tickets got sold in India. So I find that we're insulated because of the heterogeneous nature of the market. Whereas internationally, of course, places like South Korea, Japan, China, all the countries which have got a robust local market, that is still doing well. And we got a little bit of glimpse recently. I mean, the second wave has again thrown everybody off gear, but little window that we got where Godzilla versus King got released in India, it did 65 crores, even though cinemas were shut in a lot of places. 400 million has been the worldwide box office. US, the weekend collections were 81 million. So we've got a glimpse. The movie called Demon Slayer in China, another one in Japan. 800. It's called. So a little opening people got that you can go to the cinemas. The filmmakers got that you can release the film in the big theaters. Suddenly, people went. And even in India, we had a movie called Master, which is only in South India, ended up doing 200 crores. A new movie, which is a Pink. Remember that movie Pink of Mr. Bachchan? A remake of that called Vakil Sahib just got released. Incredible occupancies, incredible results. So these are the things that only make me feel that, globally also, there's a pent up demand of people wanting to go out, just human nature, nothing else. And it's experiential versus utilitarian. So when you're sitting at home, it's not an experiential thing, as Uday mentioned, the going out experience, big screen, popcorn, sound, people still like it, the whole communal experience. So that is what is going to help us survive. And India, I just find much more of a robust market, because the cinemas are also very few. We only have 3,000 cinemas as compared to 40,000 in the US, around 70,000 in China. So we were still on that growth trajectory when suddenly this thing happened. So I believe that, as I said earlier in my answer as well, that it is a year where, it is difficult to talk about major structural changes. In fact, major structural changes in the business should be spoken about when things are normal. When things are abnormal, I think one shouldn't. It's counterintuitive what I'm about to say. But in fact, I was quite happy when transactions were happening. When OTT platforms like Netflix, big behemoths like Amazon, Disney, they were buying movies, I was quite happy because at least the money was flowing back into the film industry. You see, the more money goes back into the film industry, the more they get encouraged to make movies. Suppose there was no money flowing back into the film industry, then how would they make further content? And content is so important. So I was never bothered if somebody would call me and say, Ajay, you know what? I'm not going to be able to release the movie on the cinema. I'm going straight to platform. I said, fine, my shop is shut. You can go wherever you feel like, and you should. And you must monetize your content because we are a mom and pop movie making fraternity. We're not like 6 studios who can come out with their own platform. I'll just take half a second more. Disney, where Uday was earlier, look at the market cap. Just by announcing they're going to get into streaming and have Disney Plus, I mean, they've gone bigger than Netflix. So obviously they are going to be streaming movies and releasing movies on their platform because it's big money out there and people are watching. But at the same time, they're not going to forget out of home entertainment. Warner has again announced their 22 slate to be back to the cinemas. So because now 250 odd million people have got vaccinated in America, so cinemas are opening up slowly, and they've realized that they can't basically ignore the first harbinger of basically monetizing of content.
Okay. Ajay, though I'm quite surprised to hear that you were fine about the fact that there were, companies and producers who were saying we're going direct to home, because that's not the way we were reading all the news. Even internationally, when Universal announced it, that they would have simultaneously doing it. I think AMC was the chain that absolutely went nuts and said, then we'll not release any movies. It's happened here in India also. The 16-week grace period, or as the golden period that's called, is supposed supposed to be the reason why cinema halls actually pull in that kind of money. So I'm quite surprised to hear that you were okay about it. I understand that if your shop is shut, but it also, I mean, like a lot of people say, once you taste blood, you can think that, maybe smaller movies is the way to go, direct to home is the way to go, completely take out cinema halls from the equation is the way to go. So aren't you afraid that that could become the business model?
No, when I'm open, when cinemas are absolutely ready to, at 100% capacity, then of course I would not like movies to go to OTT platforms straight away. I was talking about when my shop was shut.
But let's say a lot of people realize that that's making smaller budget is better. A huge extravaganza is not required. The business model works better. The return on investment is as percentage, not necessarily volume, is better. There's been a lot of talk on that there's people who put in money into movies have realized that it's not a bad deal to go direct to subscribers through streaming. So isn't that a scary prospect for you in the future?
Rajiv, it's not scary because if the movie is meant for OTT platform, then it goes straight away to OTT. There is no problem whatsoever. But luckily, what has happened is in the last few years, if you look at, again, I'm sorry, I'm giving same examples of Ayushmann Khurrana movies and Rajkumar Rao movies. Nobody knew they will do so well. So blockbuster is not defined by its budget. A blockbuster is defined by the box office revenues it generates. Okay, so the budget of these movies may be small, but they ended up doing over 100 crores of business. So there is no cap when a movie gets released on theatrical. You can play it for as long as you want because all three stakeholders make money. The government makes money on GST, the theater people make money, and the producer makes money. Whereas if you sell directly to OTT, then nobody knows, then there's a cap. That's all you can make. So a lot of small film, medium budget and small budget movies also realized that if the content is good, if the content has the potential to connect with the audiences, then it is better to release it theatrically first. Don't shut the first window. And that is what is going to happen. So as I said, there were some movies in the small period that we were open, like Ruhi came, Chehre was about to get released. Then that badminton movie, Saina, almost got released, but then again we got shut down. So I was quite surprised that even small budget movies were still saying, no, we first must go to the theatrical revenues must be earned first before we go to other platforms. And just if it is only meant for OTT, then it's a separate issue altogether. There are movies meant to be OTT.
Right. All right, Uday. Now, an important aspect. I was reading a lot about this particular thing with a lot of studios, and this has happened abroad, but I've heard of a lot of the conversation happening here in India. Some of the big six studios, Disney being one of them itself, they were producers of movies, and they have now become streaming platforms themselves, which is a little incestual on its own, but it makes a lot of business sense. So if all studios do it, and it seems they are and they want to, and Disney's done very well with it, how does this impact cinema halls? Because cinema halls, for example, a studio that is also a streaming platform just gets to be even bigger. Do you believe this to be a problem in the future?
No, I don't believe this to be a problem in the future. I think there are two or three things we have to keep in mind. First of all, I don't foresee a situation where a big movie, a James Cameron movie or a Marvel movie will exclusively, all the output would go exclusively on a streaming platform, whether it is Disney's or somebody else's, because that's not how it works. Different people want different kinds of experience, and movies are so big, their magic is so powerful, primarily because people get different kinds of gratification at different points in time, depending on the nature of the consumer. And you are able to offer it to all of them. I'll give you a different example. I think this whole movie controversy has been made out because it's somewhat recent in India as well as overseas. It's just been made into a binary discussion that one must lose in order for the other to gain. But with due respect, I think it's a false binary. I'll give you the example of sports. When sports, were exclusively available for people who were sitting in the stadiums, and then people started putting a live match on TV, and everybody thought that who's going to go to the stadium? But if anything, the craze for stadium, the desire and aspiration for going to a stadium and watching the sport has gone even bigger. And the stadium here is my analogy for the theater. And then when we started doing streaming, let's say closer home in India of cricket matches, and if you recall, Rajiv, in 2015, the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, I decided to put all of that on Hotstar and for free. On TV, you have to pay the cable operator or DTH guy, but here on Hotstar, it was for free. And everybody, from cable operators to DTH operators to everybody, they were really up in arms against Star and personally against me, saying we were going to destroy the economics of the game. Lo and behold, streaming is way bigger, and the community of sports, the whole ecosystem of sports is much richer. IPL teams are getting more money. Cricket boards are getting more money. Players are getting more money, because we've just expanded the universe of people who can interact with the content. And I think that is exactly what we're going to see in movies. A certain kind of movies. Not everybody will rush to a stadium to watch a cricket match, and similarly, not everybody would go to a theater to watch a film. There are certain kinds of movies, big movies, event movies that I really care about, either for their story or for their cast or for the director or for the overall experience. People would continue to go to the theaters. And then the movies that were getting choked because they were not getting the exhibition screen, or they were not getting an exhibition opportunity. 2 years in advance, 3 years in advance, Holi, Diwali, Eid, 2nd October, 15th August, 26th January, they were all taken. And a good movie struggled. Today they have an opportunity to go to another screen. So I think it's a reset, but it's a reset that makes the entire creative ecosystem of content, whether it is movie or other things, and it's a reset that makes the consumer ecosystem richer and gives them more choices and options.
Okay. So, Ajay, this is just a question with a one-word answer because my main question follows. So what Uday said, if cinema halls become only about the big extravaganza, would you be happy or unhappy?
No, I'll be unhappy. As I said, because
you'll be unhappy. I thought that because there can't be that many, and you said in India it's a volume game. All right.
Can I just make a quick point to that, Rajiv?
Sure.
I'm sure, as Ajay said, and I respect him and love him for being very upfront and transparent. But I think, again, it's the fear of the unknown. Look, the sad part is that in this country, there are not enough big movies that are being made. There are a few visionaries like, Raju Hirani, and then there is Rajamouli, and now there is Ayan Mukherjee making a Brahmastra. But this country of 1.3 billion people, with movies, with the brand of movies being so big as they are, our capacity to use technology to create great experiences, we should be making many more big movies. And there are two reasons for that: shortage of big screen exposure and shortage of capital. Because, everybody wants to make movies at 30 crores, 50 crores, 60 crores. But, Brahmastra, which was the last movie that I commissioned before I exited, is going to be the most expensive movie. And yet it is not as expensive as movies that should be made in this country, because there is the economics doesn't support. We need to be pushing out movies on multiple screens to other geographies, etc., etc. So I think sometimes pressures are positive disruptive forces, and the fact that not everything can get a screen in Ajay's theater will force people to go to other things, and the fact that there are screens available will encourage people to make bigger movies.
Okay, all right. So, Ajay, I'm going to ask you, unless you have any rejoinder to that, I have a question for you.
I have equal amount of respect, if not more, for Uday's insight into this business. So, absolutely agree with it.
All right. Okay. So, Ajay, let's talk a little bit about something where, I may come out as being very pessimistic right now, but if I was saying the same thing last year around this time, I would have still been greeted by the same amount of pessimism. We don't still really know where we are going with COVID. I know the vaccination is the silver lining, but we've also seen what else has happened. if I can just paint a slightly dismal scenario. So 1 year from now, COVID continues to be, its destructive path continues. They're only able to, let's say, control 15, 20% of it. What dramatic changes, technological or otherwise, would you have to make to still sustain some part of your business?
Rajiv, I'm a listed company, so I should not be making too many negative thoughts, but 1 year will be too much. I think,
Okay.
we are talking about a situation where globally, this industry very obviously, like in India, has got very badly impacted, but global governments have come forward and helped the industry. There have been furloughs given. I've been talking to all the studio heads, exhibition heads, Adam Aaron, who's the head of AMC, he's the CEO. Mookie, he owns Cineworld, he owns Regal Cinemas, View, Tim Richards. They've all got huge rescue packages on in terms of furloughs. The whole thing has been declared force majeure. They've got amazing rental reliefs from the developers because of force majeure event. So I think if it carries on for too long and we don't get any government support whatsoever, then we're in trouble. The whole exhibition industry is going to be in trouble. And I think that is a big thing. And as just to, a little play of words, we'll be breaking something which is already fixed. So I think that we shouldn't be doing. I think it is not the film industry, it is not the OTT players, it's not the consumer. They are going to make us thrive in the future. But it's the government doesn't do anything, and this COVID keeps on going, extending. It's a problem. We almost had reached the finish line, or like Obama wrote in his book that he was climbing this mountain, and he reached the mountain, and then he looked back and said, "Wow, I've traveled a lot now. I'm glad." But then he looked, the mountain was still going up. So that is what is happening with us now. And if this climb keeps on carrying on, it's not going to be good. So I think somebody has to come out and with the rescue package for the industry.
All right. I hope that happens. So, gentlemen, I have lots of other questions, but we are running out of time out here. So I'm going to ask each of you a question. If you could answer in one sentence to Uday, the first one. So how can TV broadcasters now differentiate themselves from streaming platforms, and how can they compete with them? They've seen a resurgence because of a calamity, and that usually happens. Predominantly, it's happened around pure entertainment or sports and mainly news. But like I said, it's not going to last. So you said that, Star was very, very cognizant of the fact that, they're not scared of, giving up one for the other. But not everyone has made those decisions. So any golden words for traditional broadcasters?
No golden words, Rajiv. And but the only thing I would say that television has a problem in this country and globally, but particularly in this country. It's a strange dichotomy that the universe of television sets is growing in this country. And yet, there have been innovations in content, but not enough. There has been zero innovation in technology. As a result of that, when you don't make, so television has a 21st century content sometimes, 20th century content all the time, but the consumer experience is of 19th century. Unless you solve for that, television will have a problem. And the problem doesn't come from streaming. The problem comes because the consumers are getting sensitized to different kinds of experiences, and they're becoming very used to the idea of being in the center of the universe in any service that they are engaging with. So whether it is food, they have to order food, they've got used to the idea of seeing everything. But look at even the EPG, the program guide that appears on TV screen, it hasn't changed,
Right.
So that is the real problem for TV. TV's biggest strength is that after theater, the size of the screen, the quality of the video, etc., those are really, really rich, powerful magnets. But other experiences, can we do something about it? And everybody needs to do that. And there is a certain limitation of technology. So what you cannot do by way of technology to compete with streaming, you need to over-index for that by innovation in content. And the sad part is that in this country, innovation in content is really poor by and large as far as television is concerned. And that's the real challenge. They need to fix that.
Okay. So Ajay, I'm going to ask you, and then the same question to Uday also. If you were to invest right now, a fairly large amount, would you invest in opening more new cinema halls and multiplexes, or would you open your own streaming platform now?
I think streaming platform is a very crowded place. I would definitely invest in what I'm doing because, as I mentioned, the cinema industry is grossly underscreened in India, and we were on a path of expansion, which was adding more than 150 screens a year. So I would still continue to do that in the exhibition sector. And just
would you do it right now? My question is, if that very large sum of money was given today, where would you invest it?
Mutual funds. Let them.
वही सही है, huh? All right. Uday, same question to you. Very large sum of money. Where would you invest it?
Look, first and foremost, COVID will go. So if I have a large sum of money and if there is an opportunity, I would invest in streaming. But I think the best place to invest right now is in content, because whether it is a TV screen or a streaming service or Ajay's screens, they will all come and buy more content. So the best place to invest is content.
Okay. Ajay, are you looking at any technology that is going to make things a little bit safer? There are talks about, air conditioning that can actually take care of viruses and bacteria. There are other technologies that are coming in because while your safety protocols are amazing, it's also one of the things that takes away from a movie experience. You want to go in and enjoy a movie and not go through 6 levels of safety protocols. It just takes away from the experience. So are you looking at technology? Are you looking at cutting edge stuff that could actually safeguard us for, let's say, the next 6 months?
Yeah, I think the touch points have to be reduced. Bulk of the consumers who are coming in India, I was surprised to do a study recently, are below the age of 39. So in fact, a big number, staggering number, which I couldn't believe, was 85% of the people are under the age of 39. And these guys don't like to be intruded too much. So I think we need to make it less and less intrusive, whether it's buying of tickets, whether it's checking of the tickets, everything has to be on their smartphone devices. And of course, the bulk of, and whether it's buying popcorn, Pepsi, all that has to be done in a touchless manner. We're investing in all that heavily. And then comes the 3 hours or 2.5 hours that you spend in the auditorium. Fortunately, there are a lot of studies to support that as it is auditoriums are 9 meters height. So therefore, the air circulation by law, by cinema building laws that we've got has to be fresh all the time. So there's not much that needs to be done. Most of the cinemas are equipped with very good air, filtration and recycling mechanisms like HEPA filters and all that. So not much needs to be done over there. But I think the touch points need to be reduced. I'm only talking about what you asked me, how to make sure people feel confident and going. Other technology, projection system, sound system, that's all changing all the time rapidly anyway to make the experience more experiential than utilitarian.
Right. Uday, the way things are going right now, what do you think would be, I mean, we keep understanding that it's going to be a vaccine that maybe eventually has to be the cure all for it all. But are there other steps that you think government could take, private individuals could take? Where do you see a true silver lining if COVID continues for a short while more?
So COVID will continue for a short while longer, Rajiv. That's the blunt truth. And I think we'll finally get ahead of it, but there's no guarantee that another health crisis will not come. So 2 things. First of all, where the government can come in is to really, really be very modern in its outlook when it comes to strengthening and rebuilding the health infrastructure is concerned. Let's face it, that health infrastructure in this country wasn't designed to deal with this kind of crisis or even to serve 1.3 billion people. So we need to do that. And secondly, the industry and government together, society as a whole, I think if we want to keep everybody safe and healthy and free from fear of morbidity, then technology is our only solution. We need to bring in technology. Technology has to be at the front and center of all our agenda, all our initiatives, all our strategy, because that's the only way we can solve the problem at scale.
Okay. Ajay, my question, and this is going to be the last question to each of you. So Ajay, I know you as a personality, you're very optimistic. You're always looking at the brighter side of things. But I'm going to actually end by asking you the same question I started with, but I'd really like you to answer to the question, which is, what is your greatest fear right now? I know that everything that you're looking at is optimistic. This will go away and therefore everyone will come back. Business models won't change. Everything will come back and come back stronger. What's your greatest fear when you come out of the gym? Because when you go to the gym, you're always very, very optimistic. When you come out of your gym and are about to go to sleep at night, what's the greatest fear? Maybe at the back of your mind, what's your greatest fear right now with all that you've seen in the last 15 months?
I think greatest fear is exactly what I said earlier, is that this thing doesn't come under control. I mean, this thing has to come under control. I mean, our government has to get its act together and has to ensure that, and this vaccination has to work. My greatest fear is, what if the vaccination also doesn't work? And then what happens? So I think this should not turn out to be a bigger disaster. Still only 2% of the world population has got impacted. 98% has not got impacted. 141 million people have got impacted. But suppose it doesn't come under control, that is the end of it all. So that's the biggest fear for anybody, and that's the biggest fear for me as well, that how long will this carry on?
So on a more micro level, there is no fear that there could have been a change in 15 months of psychological impact of people preferring to just stay at home and saying, this is actually great, I've enjoyed it more, or business changes where people say, the cinema hall part of it wasn't so necessary as we had made it in the chain, and it could be a complete different. Studios looking at things differently and becoming more selfish. On a micro level, to do only with you and your industry, there are no fears?
I'm optimistic, as I said, not because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because of these little glimpses that we got. When we opened up and the movies came, pent-up demand, the kind of emails and WhatsApps and everything that we get. When are you opening? When are we getting brand new movies? Big movies like Suryavanshi in India, big movies like Bond, Maverick, Top Gun, Fast and the Furious, all those getting deferred till cinemas open because the economic rationale doesn't work. To, as Uday said, Brahmastra, incidentally, small trivia point, my daughter's also involved in that movie. These are waiting for the theaters to open. So on a micro level, only this industry, I really think that it'll bounce back. But macro level, as I said, humanity getting saved from this pandemic is the biggest fear that I've got. We must bring this under control.
Absolutely. Uday, absolutely the last question. I've already been told that the time is up for this session, so I'm going to leave it to you for the sentence or two. Your greatest fear at a micro level for all the industries that you've actually represented, because you've played some very stellar roles, and you've also been, kind of a poster boy for changes between each of them. So tell me, your greatest fear at this moment for all the industries that you've touched.
It's, in the current context, I remain completely convinced that we will get a hang of the problem, and COVID will be a bad memory, but we would leave it behind. The biggest problem that I feel is that we would not have learned our lessons. Each industry and most of us, we would just go back to our, good old or bad old ways. And that would be such a shame, because a crisis like this is a huge opportunity to rebuild businesses, countries, categories, and societies. And that's my biggest fear.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ajay. Thank you so much, Uday. As always, it's very enlightening. And frankly speaking, like I said, I was more audience. I really wanted to hear you. And it's great to see that the two of you are extremely optimistic. I look forward to sitting down and watching a movie with you, Ajay, and you, Uday, at the same time at PVR, and may it be Brahmashastra. So, all of things coming together for all of us. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And once again, before I go, my last small humble request to all of you, for those people that post pictures without masks when you're with people, even if it's two of you together, even if you're posting an old picture, at least point it out that way, that this is an old picture and we are not without masks. The kind of disservice that you're doing by telling people that you are fine and you're doing this. There is nothing superhuman about you. There is no antibody in you different from anybody else. So mask up, get that mask up and get that common sense up. This is my humble request. We have made too many mistakes, and we've really, everything that we had gained, we've actually lost and more. So I'd really, really like all of you to mask up and get your common sense up. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to everyone.
Thank you.
Rajiv, thanks, Ajay.
Thank you.